Yes, we are live.
Oh,
John
great.
Bell, Tom
So,
Rasmussen, also known as T-Raz. I just found out his nickname.
yeah, I mean, I want to go. I'm going to use I'm going to use a pseudonym here. I'm going to go by my middle name going forward. So I'm going to go as Tom Hoyer. My middle name is Hoyer, Hoyer. So, I'm going to do that for a couple of reasons. One, uh, I just think that it has a good sound, but I still work for a living, right? And I'm trying to separate, my real life from the thing I do for money to pay the bills.
Yep,
So, yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. My name's Tom Hoyer, and I live in Washington D.C. And I have a friend in Johnny Rotten Bell here,
Johnny Rotten Bell. I
Doctor
love it. I
Bell.
love it. I will take the. I will gladly embrace that moniker. Yeah. So I think Tom, like we had talked about this, and we can kind of. I'm fine with going all over the place, but we had talked previously about maybe hitting on the military takeover of DC and sort of what that signifies, what your thoughts are, particularly as a resident. I live outside in Virginia, so more of a spectator. But yeah, and then we can go on from there. But why don't you lead us off as the citizen of the district here?
Well, sure. I mean, unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of eyewitness anecdotes to give you. It seems kind of strange to me where these guys are congregated. They're in the nicer neighborhoods, you know. And I think that just kind of yeah, that kind of lends to what we all know what this is. This is just nothing more than pure symbolic gesture in his attempt to show that he's the strong man, and by
Right.
God, he's gonna, because you know, ap- I've spent a good bit of time doing jury duty here, even grand jury duty. It's very difficult to prosecute a crime. So the arrest is a very, very small part of it. And, even if they increase arrest for throwing dagger po' boys or whatever it is, that gets you a felony assault charge, to make it stick so
Slapped
that
with a
the streets are
salami.
safer in your. I hope that was a shitty Subway
I do
sandwich and
too.
not
I
some
do too. I don't want to
neighborhood.
think that was like a grinder from like a real, Italian shop. That would be a crying
No
shame.
doubt. I mean, Subway, hell. So, so yeah, I mean, I don't see a lot of that, and this is just a big gesture. It doesn't seem like he's going to be able to take over the police department. There are certain things he can do, but he's got 30 days, and I think at the end of 30 days, what happens is finally we move on to something else. He withdraws them. We go back to business as usual. Certainly. You know, all large cities have a problem with urban crime rates. And that's just a different podcast. And I don't have any problem with, talking about that very candidly and some of my thoughts on that. But, to talk about the second part of this is the whole homeless issue that all large cities face as well. And, when you have the right and control, uh, the the way that they approach this type of thing is that homelessness is fundamentally a morality issue, right?
It's
These
a
people
character
are
flaw.
lazy. These people,
Yeah.
right? It's a character flaw. These people are weak because they're doing drugs, or even to the extreme, these people may have a mental illness, but God damn it, just puff it out. Stick your chin out and you just move on. That it, again, a flaw that you can overcome through force of will, kind of thing. That's always kind of been their understanding. I mean, I grew up in the rural South. I know these people very well, and I know how they think, and that is exactly what is appealing to them. And as I've said with you from the very beginning, I'm always more interested in kind of talking about like when we do rise from whatever ash pile that this may come to, I want to have, I want to have solutions. And I think, and there's the good news is that, I'm not a scholar. I don't study, and there's no way to study everything. But there's a lot of good scholars out there on a lot of good, solid podcasts. So there's a lot of information. And I listened to one the other day. It was on the Reveal podcast, and this is they had an individual, and I should have had his name here. I'll give it to you later. Maybe you can put it in the comments. But where it has worked, it is it a process where you must provide housing first, right? Currently, the way this is done, like in this instance here, you're arresting someone or you're kicking them out through nowhere, right? And the idea is that even if they're in a shelter, first of all, they have to get clean first in order to be admitted. They can't demonstrate or exhibit some of the behaviors they have. In other words, they have to take care of their problem
Yeah.
first. Well, to do that on the street is impossible, right? But that is what the expectation is in this current model. So, to flip back, we have to figure out a way to house these people. And it almost is a matter of triage. I think you have different levels of housing you provide for these people. Some may be very intensive in the way of medication and healthcare providers to address some immediate issues. Some other housing may be very well be a situation where we're addressing their addiction issues. And then, finally, we just may have, a population of people that desperately just need housing. You can't get a job unless you have an address,
Right.
right? So you must have an address. You get an address, okay? So that's all well and said. Obviously that sounds good. Where does this money come from? Well, you may say, yeah, right. Where does the money come from? The devil's in the details. But I feel, that if we look at the current budget and the money that we spend, I think a lot can be peeled from some obvious suspects, such as the military,
Yeah, I,
right?
I agree with
You
you,
could peel
Tom.
off
Absolutely.
a decimal point of a percentage of 1 percentage point of the military's budget, and you could address this very plan and implement it, and it would literally solve 80 to 90% of what we're experiencing
I
now.
agree that the problem is addressable. And if you kind of look at it from a 10,000-foot view, there's just no way that the richest country on earth can't do this. And it's
Right.
just it's silly, and it's actually kind of infuriating that we let the argument get twisted into that, because we're on the heels of them. uh I mean, from a budgetary standpoint, I think it's 4 to 5 trillion in debt that they've forked over to the multinationals and the billionaires, and then they're going to come back and say, yeah,
Mhm.
but we can't afford to do anything for the homeless. Number one, which is just a, it's just not a, it's not an honest argument, and it's the kind of argument that fraudsters make as they're stealing you blind. So we can absolutely pay for that and many other things. And no, it doesn't. I mean, we don't need to get into all the nitty gritty details on the economics of it, but there's a lot that we can pay for. It's a matter of priorities, and it's a matter of
No.
making those who can
Yeah.
pay, and we can do that. And I want to say another thing, because I think you kind of hit on it, which is whether it's the military takeover of DC, war against homeless, war against the poor, you name it. None of it, like, yeah, they come up with rationalizations and slogans to justify it, but I think the so-called pundits, the media, we need to be really clear that they're not doing it for those reasons. They don't care about crime. They're criminals.
Right.
Like, they only
That's
care
right.
that they're at the head of the organization, so they get their cut of the vig. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with such low people
Yeah.
that I don't think there's any room at this point to negotiate, compromise. Like, while I've spent my whole life like believing in bipartisanship, I don't really think that's not where we should be focused at the moment. That's not going to lead us out of this moment of jeopardy.
No, I totally agree. I think bipartisanship, the ship has sailed, if you will. I don't think there's in any way, and I think that's actually very dangerous for us to hang on to that hope that, thinking that they're going to play by the rules. It is plain, objectively apparent that they have no intention of playing by the rules.
Nope.
And while we're trying to set a good example, I totally respect that, and I want to be on the side that does lead by example. And we have to fight fire with fire in this instance. We're in an existential crisis right now.
Uh,
We truly are.
Absolutely.
There's no hyperbole there.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't.
Yeah.
I think
Truly, there's no.
anyone who wants to argue otherwise or doesn't want to admit that is just they've got their head in the sand. And it's
Yeah.
unfortunate. I think this past week, Rachel Maddow made the assertion on her show that we are no longer living in a democracy, that we are in a consolidating dictatorship. And I agree with that. I think that, I mean, we can argue, and probably rightly so, that we've been, our democracy has been, weakening over the decades by intentional actions, by a lot of these interests that are supporting Trump and MAGA. But we're at the point where I think we are going to have to reestablish democracy in the country, and that's going to mean letting go of some of the things that we relied on in the past, and building new structures and frameworks that deal with all of it. Because I don't see how. I don't think we can put Humpty Dumpty back together again, I guess is my point.
No, we can't. And, I think in this 21st century, with the advent of some of the technologies that we're now looking at, with the coming new world order uh, versus America's place in the world in the 20th century, that we're going to have we're going to need some radically different thinking, right? You're going to need to just completely reject some of the, really the main structural foundations of, trust, uh, this idea that we've all lived by, that the free market system fixes everything. That's simply not the case. We have seen that because, we set in we set in place these antitrust laws. The laws are only good if you really enforce them. If you've got a system that recognizes when the creep is happening, and they basically go about prosecuting the antitrust laws and looking at the situation with some real thought to it, some foresight that says what happens if, in fact, we allow the consolidation of wealth and power in few places, and what that does to us as a country, as a population, as a democracy. It's bad.
Yep.
If you really want to know, the real reason for the inflation, certainly, you can start at COVID, spike in the money supply. So these are all fundamental economics. But I think it gave cover to every single corporation out there to simply raise their
Oh,
prices. I think
absolutely.
that is what has happened.
I've seen a number of
So
experts in that area. Whether it's, there's a
sure,
term that's been coined, called shrinkflation, where they'll offer you the same price, but it's 30% less product, or they're raising prices at a rate that exceeds inflation. Fact of the matter is, whenever they have an opportunity to maximize margins, they're gonna do it. They're gonna do it unless somebody is watching them and holds them accountable. But to your earlier point, I agree. I think that the massive concentration of wealth may could be the single biggest factor and danger to our civic society because we've got. I mean, I try not to like harsh on people's looks, but I think you can just look in the face of people like Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos, when they're, you know, cavorting or getting ready to, you know, try to dominate a particular industry. And I mean, I'm sure they don't view themselves as you know lacking in human characteristics and empathy and but I think that they by default they lose touch with what it means to be a typical normal working stiff, and they believe they're entitled to this I mean, think about it, like whether it's taking them on legally, whether it's being forced to live sort of underneath their influence in terms of how much market share they accumulate and how much power they have, and eliminating our choices. They somehow think that that's a fundamental right that they have because capitalism.
Well, I mean, I listened to an interview with one of Amazon's co-founders, one of the early investors that kind of built it up, and he said, if you were to talk to Jeff Bezos now, one on one over a beer, he really truly believes that he's earned every dollar that he's worth, right? His entire
Oh
value.
yeah.
He believes he's earned it. So to your, what you said earlier, entitled to it. Yeah. They truly feel that everything that they've gotten is part of the American way, and that anyone that tries to take that is obviously a socialist, favorite label, an enemy. That's why they're going along with Trump now. They'll do anything that he says. And my thing is, I want to get back, and my message is always going to be, these are human beings. Human beings. This is just human nature, I think. I wish it were not. I wish these people were bigger, but it just seems to be human nature that when you get to this point where you're having to you have to demonstrate some self restraint and stop grabbing more. You just can't do it, and the power is too good, so they can't do it. So therefore, the role of government to come in. It is not good for this country as a whole to have so much money, wealth, and power in the hands of so few. It is not good. We are going to have to reapportion the wealth back into the consumer class. I'm going to stay away from the poor. I think, that's bad messaging. Nobody identifies as poor. It has a stigma associated with it. Fine. I'll say it. I don't have any money. You could call me poor. But I do think, I would say, everybody out there wants something better.
Right.
And I think if you have a government that serves that fundamental desire to have an opportunity to take your fate into your own hands, your destiny, and make your life better for you and yours going forward, you're going to need to have resources within your reach to do that, which means that money needs to come back. Because if you put the money in the hands of the people, they will spend
Yep.
it. That is the only driver of the economy and growth in jobs. If you have a job or an idea, I should say, for a business that is creating some kind of trinket, toy, service, whatever have you, the more addressable market, the more people that you have out there that have the ability to buy it, the better chance your business will have of success.
Yep.
The fewer dollars, it's as fundamental as that. So, yes, we do need to tear that money back down into the economy. Now, the crazy thing about it is the people that are successful in business already will do very well. because the more people we buy in their shit.
Yeah.
It's that
It
simple. Everyone
actually,
will do
yeah,
better.
there's a pretty strong, if not irrefutable, economic argument that um, flatter or more equitable income distribution actually creates a larger pie for everyone. But I think
That's
you
right.
yeah, there's a tendency, and you mentioned human nature, and I think it really is, because I think, a lot of these, I mean, some rich people obviously do get their money by taking other people's money. I've seen that a lot. But like, even on the entrepreneurial side, these are very competitive people, and the money is the way to keep score. So it's like, yeah, they have more than they can
Sure.
possibly need, though they will dream
Right.
of ways to spend it just
Right.
because it's there. But at the end of the day, I think it's like, what they don't know what else to do with themselves. Like, what do I do? Like, how do I win?
Right.
Like, we can't just play the game.
Right.
Like, we have to keep score, and there has to be a winner and potentially a loser. And I think there's some interest. Like, I'm very much aligned with people like Elizabeth Warren when it comes to the idea of instituting a wealth tax. In fact, I'm not sure hers goes quite far enough,
Right.
but I absolutely agree. I think, I'm actually, because there's literally nothing else on the platforms right now, the streaming platforms. I'm watching the show The Gilded Age that's on HBO, which I don't even like. I'm like literally watching it, but it is a cautionary tale. Like, we've been here before. We know what happens. There were, that era consisted of, incredible labor abuses,
Right.
virtual indentured servitude for most that weren't part of the aristocracy, and eventually
Right.
the Great Depression. And so, the economics of fair income and wealth distribution are, in my view, incontrovertible. I mean, period. I've read a lot. A really good person to read on this. It's very readable, kind of like Robert Reich. Is Joseph Stiglitz, and I think it was The Price of Inequality was one of his books that I read. But yeah, I mean, it's really pretty simple, and it doesn't have to go over everybody's head. But I think it comes down to, like, if we're gonna boil this country down to some, a few core principles, like fairness has to be one of them. And what we've got right now isn't fair. If you ever, whether you're whatever position you're in, none of us in the working class have what it takes to go against somebody with a lot of money. Like, we don't have the same access to the
Right.
legal system. We don't have consultants saving us money on taxes or helping us grow our wealth. Like, none of that's available. And so I think part of the new system needs to have that built in, which is, you know, if you've been so fortunate both through your position that you were born into and the work that you've done to become, so wealthy, then we need to get it into our culture that you need to give back, like more of a Warren Buffett type. Though I'm not saying he's the necessarily the paragon of virtue given the companies he invests in, but just, yeah, I mean, I think we're in agreement there that all of this is culminating into an environment where I think, like, people of all kinds of classes and positions are gonna, you know are gonna be oppressed. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. And whether you're black, brown, LGBTQ, and certainly the MAGA movement, even though it has a lot of economically disadvantaged people in it, man, do they hate the poor. I you know, I mean, that's the worst thing that you can be. And
Right.
like you said, rather than like
Right.
having some humanity and compassion for people that are homeless for all the various reasons, and thinking about how do we help lift them up, it's like, how do we get rid of them? Let's throw them in jail, or I don't know what they're doing. They just want to make them disappear because they're an eyesore and a nuisance, and they probably make those people feel just a little bit bad, maybe a little guilty or something. I don't know, but
Right.
yeah, they got to go.
Right.
So it's yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean,
terrible.
I think there's this yeah, I think there's this misconception that most of the people that they consider to be poor are, back from the Reagan era, welfare queens. In other words, they're living on the public dole. They're just sitting around, having sex, having kids, drawing down a welfare check, and they're not working. When the reality of the situation is that, first of all, I mean, the number of people that can live on welfare and would want to is so small. It is just so small. And it's obvious because people are out there working two jobs or whatever, hustling on the weekend because they can't make enough money to pay the bills to live in anywhere. I mean, there is not a state in this union that you can pay apartment rent, even including places like Arkansas,
Right.
Mississippi, rural Alabama, based on the current minimum wage, right? So
Well, right,
I find it
but
far from it.
you're right. The minimum wage is not a livable wage, and this mythical welfare state that has all these welfare kings and queens living in style doesn't exist. Like, show me the program where you can get that money.
Doesn't
Like,
you're
it's not
right.
unemployment. It's not like, what else is there? Like, we've cut down everything, and now we don't even want to, provide food benefits to people. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of this, you know, we have to differentiate going forward, and I think you and I probably need to work this in as best practices. We need to differentiate between media and propaganda because media, and I'll admit, there's a gradient in the media world that can have a what would be considered a liberal bias in the way they edit their material and present it. However, it's factual. The point is that they're trying to present something that's factual and that's happened. Um, the propaganda side of it is basically just that. It is designed to achieve a certain objective, an outcome, a reaction. Uh, Fox News does this based on the profit motive completely and totally. They do not care about the consequences of what they're doing. Everything's great for them. You've got a bunch of people there that just have come to convince themselves that everything that they're saying is right on and everybody else be goddamned. And they'll say anything, they'll believe anything. The rest of us who are seeing this with their very own eyes are pulling our hair out like, how in the world? And it's really, it's just, you know, it's really soul crushing in a lot of ways, and it just gets in your head.
Yeah,
I don't want to go down that too much, but
no, but I mean, you're absolutely right, and I think, I think more one of, and I think a lot of political scientists and sociologists and those types would agree that there may not have been really any single more impactful organization and group of people than Fox in terms of radicalizing this, the right, and bringing us to this point of just bitter partisanship, because it's like in the old days of what you argued and you made your case, and sometimes you won, sometimes you lost, but both sides were bought into the system. where and the
Right.
irony of it too is like, Rupert Murdoch is from fucking Australia. Like, give me a break. Like, how did we let a foreigner, come in and do this to our country? Uh, it's ludicrous, and and they're not like, I think that they, if they didn't invent the whole model of pushing people's rage buttons constantly, they certainly perfected it, and now it's been copied. I mean, I would put Face or
That's true.
Meta and Zuckerfuck into that whole category because they're just monetizing people's manipulated emotions to their benefit, and all
That's right.
all of our, like, we're all paying the price.
That's correct. That's right. It's a model based on making people feel a certain way rather than think a certain.
Yeah,
You don't have to go into a lot of objective facts to get someone to feel anger, feel fear, feel resentment. It's a very, simple model. Thinking first. You have to work through all these numbers and facts, and sometimes there's contradictions. Oh my God. So, yeah, it's a simple model, and it is targeted toward a certain demographic, and it's very, very effective.
I think that's something that we can co-opt a bit though, and we can do it without losing our moral compass, because I think if there's ever been a period in my lifetime, being kind of a post civil rights baby, and thinking that we were heading down a path of ever increasing progress.
Yeah,
um, I
right.
think that we need to tap into that, because I think a lot of people should be angry, and I think we need to help them focus in the right areas, and to throw off. I get it. I mean, like, we've all been so heavily marketed to in this system, in terms of, you need to buy all this shit, and you need to accumulate all this stuff and wealth in order to be happy, and blah blah blah. Forget about your community, forget about your values. I think there's a lot of room here for some righteous anger. And one of the things I got to admit, I'm still a little bit skeptical overall. I don't think he's like the second coming, but I will admit that I've been pretty impressed with how Gavin Newsom has been fighting back for California, and just sort of the, I don't know, the in your face trolling that they're starting to do, I think, is effective. I think, because I think people, uh, even, like, forget about the ones that you're trying to convert. I think the people that are, like, if you just look at the Democrats, like, abysmally low approval rating at a time when
Right.
they need to be surging, not at their lowest level in measured history. And I think a big part of that is because people want fighters. They want people that are willing to say the truth, and to say it in a way that's maybe a bit in your face, and that serves as a rallying cry, because the time right now is not for, like, the soulless technocrats who are just, like, droning on and on about policy. I mean, that's great. We need better policy. Policy is the engine. I understand that. But if you're going to talk about motivating people, getting them to fight alongside you, getting them to the polls, getting them into the streets, uh, yeah, you got to go beyond that. And I think he's kind of doing a good job, and I'd like to see more Democrats getting aggressive like that. What do you think?
Well, I think there's no secret that, he wants to be the president. And he's acting like a guy that's got a plan.
Yep.
And, he, you know, to borrow from popular, I mean, Bill Maher says it all the time, but He looks like a president, right? He looks like central casting for a movie. He's an excellent
He
communicator.
is.
He is he's a seasoned veteran. He's run the biggest state. He's got everything. And, my old slam with him is, like he tended to think that he was above the rules and above everybody else, like during the virus and that kind of thing. But that seems quaint now, compared to what
Yeah.
we look at now. So absolutely, keep doing what you're doing, and I'll throw I'm already there. I'm watching. But yeah, keep doing what you're doing, brother. I'll support you 100%. I'm looking for it. Has to be a messenger, man. We've got to have a messenger. Got to have a message, but we got to have a messenger. And I've never seen a more pathetic group than the Democrats right now, and that's why we have Trump back in office, is because
Yeah.
the Democrats such poor showing that middle part of that country is like, look, I don't know, I can't even vote for. I'm going to vote for Trump over that.
Yeah.
We have a problem.
I agree. I agree. And I'm going to go off here a little bit because you struck a nerve. You probably knew.
There's the wind up,
Yeah.
the stretch.
So, so I agree. I think the Democratic leadership has been complete shit overall. I really am dreadfully concerned if we maintain Chuck Schumer, in the position that he's in. And as many problems as I do have with Pelosi, because I think she kind of represents, she has a lot of really deep corporate ties, big money, big donors. I don't like that. I don't like the role that she played with Biden and that whole mess. And I think she was trying to put together a dog and pony show that would have given her the ability to decide who was going to, assume the race for Biden. She was not a fan of Kamala. But all that aside, she did get, when Biden was in office, she got the bills passed in the House that probably would have changed things dramatically. I'm not sure if Trump would be president. And one of the bills, I think it was the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, or it was the other one, but regardless, there was legislation there that would have eliminated gerrymandering nationwide. So we probably would have a Democratic House right now that would have been a counterbalance.
Right.
And they failed miserably on that. I mean, yeah, they passed the infrastructure bill and blah, blah, but again, those bills were number one. They were watered down significantly by all the various corporate interests and the Democrats that were bought off, like Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin. But they failed to protect democracy when they had the opportunity. They failed to wield power, to double down on those core values. And they could have done it all. They could have done court reform, and we would be in a much different place. So I don't forgive them. And I'm looking now at senators like Patty Murray. She's the lead Democrat on appropriations, and they're all looking to do a deal. And another person I'd like to call out positively, and also most certainly has presidential ambitions, I believe, but that's Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut. He's the only one in that whole process that is saying no deals, no negotiations with terrorists, no compromise with fascism.
Yeah. Right, exactly.
You want to shut down the government now? Fine. Because you know what? Now the government is our enemy. you know, like,
Right.
you know, there's no,
All right.
there's nothing. And you know what they're going to get out of these people? Nothing. Nothing. They'll get nothing.
No, of course not. It's like ceding the territory that Russia now controls in Ukraine, calling an end a truce, and thinking that Putin's not just going to start the war back up
Right.
in the future date. You give if you give an inch, they're going to continue to take a mile.
These
I
people
mean, there is
never
no
stop.
negotiation within it.
They never stop
They'll
because
never stop.
they are I don't even want to call it addicted. They have a belief system that they believe permits them
Right.
to insatiably seek power and dominion
Right.
over others, and fuck that.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Yep.
95 like that's the problem. That's why people don't like the Democrats either, because they know that even though they talk a good game and they'll say the right things about a lot of stuff, half of them I guess don't mean it because they've been bought off. You know, whether they're taking money from APAC or they're taking money from the corporations or
Correct.
whatever it is, like you're just not going to do the right thing, and we know it. So I like, you know, I'm looking for leaders who are brave enough to not take any corporate money, not to have any influence from that side, and not to take money from organizations that are playing both sides. You know, like why would you take money from an organization that also funds extreme radical Republicans like
Right.
APAC? I don't get it.
That's right.
You know,
So, as we launch our inaugural episode here, that's going to be one of our things. We're going to seek out and try to identify these very individuals that have pledged to remain money free, basically, influential money free. Understand you have to have money, but corporate money designed to uh, return is absolutely, and we'll promote them here. Absolutely, we
absolutely,
will.
because you know what? There's enough
So,
money, like for like the Democrats, even in the last election, which is not the model I want to hold up, but there was plenty of money, and a lot, and a huge portion of it did come in the form of small dollar donations. Or look at Bernie Sanders or AOC; they don't have problems fundraising.
yeah,
They don't. They get more than enough money.
that's right. That's right.
So it's about who
That's
you
right.
take the
That's right.
money from, and who you're in bed with.
Correct.
And if you want to,
Correct.
yeah. So I think that's it, and I think hopefully we can help, but and that's what this is all about. But like, people, we need to start demanding so much more of our leaders, and not just, it's all well and good. You can say, well, you know, elect us because Donald Trump's terrible. The midterms are coming. I mean, that's such an average, sort of pitch in times, you know, safer times. This is about
Yeah.
who's gonna do whatever it takes. And one thing, and I'm sorry for being so ADHD here, but going back to Gavin Newsom and just the Democrats in California, and why I'm kind of excited about what they are doing, which is, I think they're showing leadership because, yeah, they're nobody likes the idea that we're abandoning, fair and impartial districting process in California or wherever. But they're not totally abandoning their principles in how they're going about it. The citizens of California are going to vote on it. It's going to require 2/3 to pass it. So it's by definition democratic. It has an expiration
Correct.
date, and it's specifically called out, or they've called out the fact that they're doing it because of what they're doing in Texas and elsewhere, and for no other reason. And so I think that shows one of the ways that we should be fighting back, which is, yeah, we can be aggressive and we can fight fire with fire, but we don't have to become fascists in the process.
Right. No, but yeah, exactly. And I think I think we draw this to a close for this particular episode on that point.
Yep.
Absolutely. And I think, John, as we've discussed earlier, I think we're going to try to do one of these a week, and hopefully, we'll get this set up on a YouTube channel so that everybody can like, subscribe, etc. And we'll do our best to to kind of speak freely and candidly. I think that's ultimately our goal here is to, you know, John and I are not going to do this to get rich. We are not going to do this to get any kind of real celebrity. We basically feel to our core that something needs to be done. If we do this for a year and we end up with 100 subscribers, at least in the interest of posterity, we'll go on the record to say, hey, at least we did something, and I can live with that.
Yeah, I agree completely. And certainly hoping for the best success. But I think, like you said, if we end up with 100 subscribers, or fundamentally, you know, changing a few people's minds, or motivating a few people to get into the game and join the fight, that's something,
Right.
that's an accomplishment. And I think, I don't view this as a competition amongst, within our segment. I view it as the more voices, the better. The more debate and the
Right.
more honest, um, you know, uh, exchange of ideas that we can get, the better chance we'll have of defeating this. And before we sign off, I'll just say you're so right. I've been arguing this for a long time. It's not really about Trump. The threat to democracy isn't going to end with the midterms. It's not going to end with electing a Democratic president in 2028. I think we learned our lesson. We elected, in my view, a very good man, a very effective, dedicated, lifelong public servant as president. And I think he, a lot of the ideas, he would have signed those voting rights bills. I think he was a little too cautious on court reform, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough, because we couldn't pass the stuff in the Senate. So woulda, coulda, shoulda,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
and yet
So,
here we are. So I think we had like, yeah, I think we have to just be very demanding, very loud, and speak the truth, and let the chips fall where they may. I think, my measure of true success will be if, Attorney General, Pam Bondi, aka Fascist Barbie, comes after me. Then I have probably, achieved some measure of success, and I would wear that badge
exactly.
proudly. That fucking bitch. Whew.
Right on, brother.
Right on. All right, I'm gonna stop recording, but we can,